You'll see there's a container of salt water and a container of fresh water in your package. You can write fresh and salty on each cup. I've got my fresh water all set in this cup, and in my salty cup, we're gonna put the water that I boiled and put the packet of salt that came in your kit in the cup. You're gonna wanna dissolve that salt into the cup before you continue, and let the water cool before you put it in your cup. So we're gonna do some tests to see which items float and which sink in which water. Before we do, I have a question for you. How do you think salt affects water? When salt is dissolved in water, like it is in the ocean, it makes the water more dense. More dense means a cup of salt water is heavier than a cup of fresh water. Observe carefully as we take turns picking up a cup of fresh water and a cup of salt water in front of you. Although they have the same amount of water in them, the salt water, the cup that is cloudy, will be heavier than the fresh water, the cup that is clear. That's because salt water is denser. For something to float in water, it has to be lighter or less dense than the water under it. Since salt water is denser than fresh water, some items are light enough to float in salt water, but still too dense to float in fresh water. You may have noticed that when we're at the beach, it's easier for a person to float in the salty ocean than in a pool or a lake. Now you'll notice in front of you a piece of paper with some questions about which items you think will float in the salt water and which in fresh water. Read the questions and check whether sink or float next to each item and the type of water. Then we'll check to see if your guesses are correct. You can see on your list you have some items here like a paper clip or cereal or apple or grapes, and we gave you guys some items in this baggie here to test. We've got a rock, a hair clip, a paper clip, a rubber band, but also feel free to grab some stuff from home. You can use things like cereal or popped popcorn or even unpopped popcorn. You can also use a hard-boiled egg. Once you're done with the experiment, go back and see on your yellow sheet if your answers were correct. Asking questions about what floats in freshwater or saltwater is fun, and it's easy to find answers. Sometimes though, we ask questions about life and why things happen, and those questions aren't so easy to answer. However, the Bible makes it clear that God is bigger than our unanswered questions, and we can trust that He is always good and wise, even though we may not get our questions answered on this side of heaven. So next time you go swimming in a lake, pond, or ocean, remember that God is powerful enough to create the water and is also loving and kind to you. You can trust God.
Welcome to day 5 of Deep Sea Crafts. Today we're going to be making an underwater scene. You have all of the supplies you will need in your day 5 craft kit. We are going to be using this blue piece of paper to be our background, so you want to start with that. The next thing we're going to be adding is this band of sandpaper. This is going to be the sand at the bottom of the ocean. On the back of the sandpaper, we are going to be putting glue kind of towards the bottom of the sandpaper. I'm going to be using a glue stick and putting glue just along the bottom of the sandpaper. And I will be showing you why you just want to put it towards the bottom. So I'm putting it about on the bottom half, just like that. Now I'm going to be matching this up with the bottom of my paper and pressing it down so that it looks like the sand at the bottom of the ocean. It's kind of fun to feel the texture of the sand. You probably don't want to rub your hand across it because that could hurt, so I'm just pressing it down. This is what it looks like when you have your sand glued on. The next thing we're going to be adding is the seaweed. So I'm going to take the green paper out of my bag and I'm going to be gluing it on. Now, gluing each piece of seaweed would take a long time. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to fold up my sandpaper a little bit and just make a big cloud with my glue stick. Now, don't worry because the glue stick will dry clear. Once I have a big cloud like this of glue, then I'm just going to be taking my seaweed and just pressing it on. And the reason I'm lifting up my sandpaper is that way it kind of looks like the seaweed is growing out of the sandpaper. So I'm just pressing the seaweed down into the glue. Just trying to get it to stick the best I can. All right, well, once I have one side done, and you can already see the glue is starting to dry clear, I'm gonna add some more seaweed on this side. So I'm gonna take my glue stick, hold back the sandpaper, and make just a big cloud of glue to hold down my seaweed. And I'm just gonna be putting tons of seaweed over here. If your glue starts to dry and your seaweed hasn't stuck down yet, you can just always add some more and add a little bit more seaweed. I want there to be lots of seaweed for my sea creatures to live in. All right. Once I'm done with my seaweed, it's time to add the sea creatures in. We have these awesome stickers of different coral that we can add down by the sand, or sea creatures that can live in the ocean. So I'm gonna be peeling off the back. There's a white wax paper on the back that you can peel off, and then add the stickers into my underwater scene. This is a seahorse, and I know that seahorses love to hold on to this seaweed. So I'm gonna be putting this sticker right by the seaweed. I'm gonna add the rest of my stickers to create my underwater scene. Now my underwater scene is complete. If you want to add more details with a marker, maybe you could add more creatures or seaweed or hidden treasure, you can do that on your own. When we look at the great big ocean, it reminds us about how amazing God is. I'm going to remind us of some of the things we've learned about this week on Mystery Island. We learned that God is great and that He is mighty. We also learned that God is always with us and that He knows everything. God is powerful and God is good. We learned that God is so loving, He loves you more than anything, and God can be trusted. I hope you enjoyed doing crafts this week with us. We really, really loved having you for VBS Mystery Island.